So a few months ago, I made a video about shooting a roll of lomochrome purple. And after I posted it, Lomography sent me a message saying they saw the video and they loved it. And they asked if they could send me some more of their experimental film. So of course I said yes. The roll they sent me is their Fantome Kino 8 ISO black and white film. This film produces a very contrasty image with a very low grain. And when they asked me if I had any ideas for what kind of thing I would want to shoot with this roll, immediately double exposures popped into my mind. It's something I've been wanting to try for a while, and the contrasty film just seemed like a really great fit for it. So the way you shoot a double exposure is by exposing the film twice. Now, the way I wanted to put this into practice was shooting a series of silhouettes first, and then filling the silhouettes in with some texture for the second round. Now, there's two different ways that you can shoot a double exposure. The first way requires a camera that will allow you to expose the same frame twice without advancing the film. Now, some older manual SLRs will have a button at the bottom that you can press, so you can reset the shutter without advancing the frame, or electronic SLRs like this one will have a setting where you can choose to expose the same frame multiple times. The advantage of this is that you can make sure that the frames line up precisely. However, for what I wanted to do, this wasn't going to work because I wanted to have silhouettes, and if I have to expose the same frame 2 times in a row, I have to take a silhouette, go out, fill it in, come back, shoot another silhouette, and that process would just take forever. So I decided to go with the second method, which is shooting the whole roll first, winding it back very carefully, and then shooting it for the second time as a whole roll again.
I'm so scared.
Can you hear the little sound?
I think it's done.
Is that?
Okay, moment of truth.
Mm-hmm.
I hope there's still film when we move this out.
Now, the easiest way to make sure that the frames line up is when you put the film in, you draw some lines on the back of the film to indicate your starting position. And then when you put it in the second time, you just line it up to the same spot and the frames should line up. Okay, so to get the silhouette look that I wanted, you generally would need some kind of studio, which I do not have, but I figured out a different way to do it. Okay, for these silhouettes, we need a white background behind the subject, and we need the subject to be backlit. Now, the way I figured out how to do this in my living room is by using this Godox light that I have, that I use to film my videos normally, and also this massive softbox with a white diffuser on it. And this will be both a white background and backlighting for the subject. So we put that light on one end of the room and we put a camera on a tripod on the other end of the room and we should be good to go. Now for my lens choice, I had several different things to consider. So first of all, I wanted the frame to be fully covered with the white background, but I also wanted to have a little bit of distance between the subject and the light to make sure that I wasn't picking up any details from the diffuser of the light and that the background was like a flat white, so I needed to be a little bit out of focus. This means that I had to go for something a little bit longer of a focal length than I would usually shoot at. Normally I like to shoot at 50 millimeters, but for this time around that wasn't going to work. So instead I settled on 135 and I used this Meyer-Gurliitz 135 2.8 that I have. Now, to keep track of all the shots that we took, all the silhouettes, I ended up making little thumbnail sketches in my notebook, just so we could keep track of all the silhouettes that I shot. We decided to take the first 18 shots in landscape mode and then switch for the second round of shots to portrait mode. Okay, time to begin shooting, but this is also when the problems begin. We are set up and ready to go. And when I hit the shutter on the first shot, everything seems to be going okay. But then when I go back for the second shot, I realize I can't see anything through the viewfinder. I think maybe I broke my camera.
You broke your camera?
So I figured out that the mirror must have gotten stuck in the flipped up position and I can't compose my shots. So panic sets in, all these weeks of planning, thinking about it, all the preparation for it to go wrong after the first shot immediately. But we decided to push through it. The camera hasn't moved, so the framing should still be correct. And the lens, luckily, has some distance markers on it for the focus distance. So we put a tape measure on the floor and we measure out the distance. We put a little piece of tape down to make sure that where we're standing is going to be in focus for the consecutive shots. And we decide to just push through it and keep going. And to my surprise, after a few shots, I checked through the viewfinder again and the mirror has just flipped down. So the issue solved itself. Since then, I haven't had this issue again. I don't know why it just happened on this shot, but I did figure out that if you unscrew the lens a little bit, it tends to maybe cause the mirror to flip down sometimes. So if you run into this, maybe this can help you out. All right, with all the silhouettes shot, it's time to go onto the street and fill them in with some texture. We shot the first set of silhouettes. Now we are going around the beautiful city of Groningen to shoot the second set. Hopefully we can get some cool shots and hopefully they work. I have to say, I'm quite happy with the results. However, there is some interesting things you may have noticed with looking at these shots. I've gone over the footage of me loading the film several times to see where I made a mistake in lining it up, because somehow I misplaced the film by about 1/3 of a frame, which causes this disconnect in the lineup of the images. It's not initially what I intended for this roll of film, but I gotta say the results are pretty cool. I got about 22 shots out of this roll, which is quite a bit higher than what I would get out of a roll of random street photography. I guess this makes sense for something that's shot in more of a studio environment rather than just pure street. There was some shots, however, though, where I was too busy thinking about the composition and I forgot to set my camera settings correctly, so the exposure messed up. Or I was trying to take some longer exposure shots at night and I forgot to set it to bulb mode, so I just got completely black frames back. But in the end, I'm quite happy with the amount of good photos that I got out of this roll. Now, these couple of shots are the closest to the original vision I had when setting out on this project. And I think if I try this again and I make sure to actually line up the frames correctly, I can get even closer to the vision I had for these pictures. Despite the little offset mistakes, it was still very fun to do. It was fun to solve these problems on the fly and to think about how I would create these images and how I would make it work. It has definitely sparked my curiosity to try more double exposures in the future, and I've already begun planning the next shoot. I've even started 3D printing some things I can move onto my camera to help in the composition for the next shots, but that will be a topic for another video. I want to thank Lomography for sending me this film. They didn't sponsor this video, but they were kind enough to give me the film for free. And if you want to read more about my experience with this role or my vision on creativity and photography in general, you can read the interview they did with me over on their magazine, the link to which will be posted in the pinned comment below this video. And for now, I'd like to thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed it, please subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.